Now that you've had some time to think over, are they having a good relationship or not? Let's kind of discuss what we've come up with. Because we know that A is happy, so A got and met her expectations of what was going on in the relationship. All the students there, they're all happy, so it met all their expectations. So we can see that according to what we said here, that they have fulfilled all these, and there's been mutual trust, mutual honesty, mutual respect and communication. They've cooperated well together, and the class has not only met, but maybe even exceeded the expectations because all the students got 4.0s. And so we can see that everybody is happy. So obviously, they're having a good relationship. However, a lot of times when we do this in class and I have students respond, and from the comments that students made in the discussion online, we can see that there's usually a student or two who says, well, I don't think they're having such a good relationship. But they're happy. They accomplished what they wanted out of all that. It met the criteria of what we have here, and yet somehow we think, well, maybe it's not so good. And as some people have pointed out, well, what about when they go to the next relationship? What about when these students take the next class? Or what about when these students, now that they're finished, and they go and they're out in the marketplace and in the job? So what about the next class? Or what about in their job? Isn't the teacher for this next class expecting them to have gained some knowledge to be applied there? Isn't the employer expecting them to be able to have some kind of skills that they'll be able to use and apply there in their job? So while they may be happy in the moment, we can see that there may be subsequent problems coming, especially if a lot of students are coming from this school and the employers are finding that they're not well trained or something like that. What's going to happen is that the school itself is going to get a bad reputation. Also, as some people pointed out, there are contingent relationships here, because even though she's doing this, doesn't she have a relationship with the administration? So these are the people that hired her, and they're paying her to perform some kind of task or do some kind of duty. She's not fulfilling this. So in order to make this relationship work, we can see that this relationship has been compromised. In order to make this relationship work, we see that this relationship has been compromised. And yet, according to our criteria, what they're having is a good relationship. So when we see something like this, lots of times what we need to do is we need to go back. Let's check our criteria. And maybe the criteria isn't specific enough, or maybe the criteria needs to be adjusted, because certainly the situation there looks like they are having a good relationship. So if we change this criteria a little bit, and we can say that a good relationship meets and or exceeds the reasonable expectations of all participants and the larger community, at the time, and for later or subsequent relationships, now that we have updated our criteria, what about the relationship that they're having now? Obviously, this is not a good relationship, because the contingent relationships are being compromised and the subsequent relationships have been compromised. So we can see that it's really important to have clear criteria in order to evaluate and decide about whether or not relationships are good or not. So what we'll be doing in our course is we'll be taking a look at what's going on in our culture and our society, and we will take some text, maybe something like this that we use for English 101, or something like this also used for English 101, or perhaps something like this that we can use for English 126 or a literature class, or something like this that we can use for literature classes or for English 101 basic classes. What we'll do is we'll take a look at some of these. So for example, what we have here is we have a variety of authors who have written articles, and what they've done is they've made observations. This is what they see going on in our society or in our culture, and then they're taking some kind of criteria and explaining that this is what's going on, and based upon the criteria that they've set, Is this a good relationship or not? What does this portend for the future? What does this tell us about things going on now? How does this relate to things in the past or things in contingent basis? So we'll be taking a look at these, and we, as young academic scholars that we are going to take a look and see what about the content of what they said. What about the criteria that these authors are using in order to observe and make some commentary about what's happening in our culture, the particular topic or particular subject that they've chosen to write about? So are they being fair in their criteria? Are they being thorough in their criteria? And what do we think? And then what we'll do is we'll write our own papers, and we'll take a look at things that we've observed going on, or that we've observed going on in some of the texts of the writings, and provide our own critical analysis about that. So I think we can all agree that this pretty much makes sense. So what we could do now is we could step back and let's take a look at the beginning of the quarter. I have asked people to write down a couple of paragraphs. One paragraph, why are you taking the class? And then another paragraph, imagine that after the quarter's over and it's maybe been a couple of weeks or a few months or maybe several years, and you look back on the class, how you decide if it's a good class or not. What we've done is typically when I do this in the classroom, face to face, what we do is then we make a list of what are the various reasons that people have for taking the class, and we'll get things like this. Some people say, well, I'm taking the class because it's required for my degree. Other people say, well, it fits my schedule. Other people say, well, I'm taking this because it's a prerequisite, it's required for other classes. Some people say, well, I'm taking this class in order to improve my writing skills or my English skills. Some people say, well, I'm trying to see if I hope to be able to gain skills that I can use in my career. Some people just say, well, I just enjoy English. Other people say, well, I'm taking the class for a second time because I want to improve the grade that I had previously. And then we make a list of what are the various reasons that people have for how would they decide if it's a good class or not afterwards. And lots of times people will say, well, I want my writing skills to improve. If my writing skills improve, then I know it was a good class. If I was able to use the content in my other classes, it was a good class. If I had fun, I know that was a good class. Other people say, well, I base it upon the teacher's methods, and are they understandable and clear? And other people say, well, it was a good class if I can remember the content later. Some people say, well, it was a good class according to what kind of a grade did I get. Some people say, well, it was a good class according to how much fun I had. And other people say, well, it was a good class depending on how well I'm able to use the content in my career. So usually here you can see I get about 6 or 7 responses here, and I get 8 or 9 responses here each time. So obviously there is some kind of overlap. So then what I tell the students to do is I say, let's take a vote. So let's take a vote and vote for your major reason for taking the class and then your secondary reason. So I say we're going to vote 2 times. First we'll vote for your primary reason, and then we'll vote for your secondary reason. So then by a show of hands, usually if I have 22 in a class, about 18 are going to say that they're taking it because it's required. A couple will say because it fits my schedule. I'll get about 3 that'll say it'll improve my writing skills. And then out of 22 students, I usually get about 23 or 24 votes because some people said, oh, we're going to vote twice, and they vote twice the first time through. So then we go through the second time, and we usually get votes that are distributed like this. So usually we find that, well, the number one reason for taking the class is because it's required for my degree. So that's usually people's primary or most important overall. And then usually about 14 out of 22, or about 2/3 of them, are going to say that, well, I'm taking this because it's required for other classes. And then some people say, well, it's required for, I want to be able to improve my writing skills or my English skills. And a few people might say, well, secondarily, since it's required, but I want to gain skills for my career. Something like that. So we can see that typically the number one reason is we're taking the class because it's required. And the number 2, we're taking it because it's required for other classes as a prerequisite. Then we do the same thing on this side, and usually we get about 18 out of 22 will say, well, my writing skills improve, and this is usually like the number one way that we can tell if it's a good class or not. And then usually something like, if I can remember the content later, then I know that this is a good class, or if I'm able to use the content later in other classes, we also know that this is a good class. So usually the distribution is spread out like that. But when we stop and consider what is it that makes a good relationship should meet or exceed, and it should relate back to what was the purpose or expectation that we had for taking the class in the first place. So if we understand all this, then we can see that typically this kind of a result, when we do this, there's some kind of disconnect. Do you see a disconnect here? Because if this is the number one reason for taking the class, if this is what our expectation and our purpose is, what is it that's going to make it a good class? Just like if my purpose for leaving home and driving to campus is to get to campus on time, how do I know if I had a good commute? If I got to campus on time. So if my primary reason for taking the class is to be required for my degree, then what is it that's going to make this a good class is get a good grade, right? So if my purpose for taking this is to get credit for my degree, then I know it was a good class if I got a good grade. But people said their number one way of telling if it's a good class or not is if their writing skills improve, which tells me that their number one priority then, their purpose is to improve their writing skills, right? So basically what happens is, lots of times we just take a look at, on the surface, what are the motivations and goals that we have on the surface? But when we take a look and see how we're going to evaluate it, this gives us a clear understanding of what we want to accomplish out of the course. So people want their writing skills or their English skills to improve. People want to be able to use the content in other classes, and people want to remember the content later. These are the real reasons why we're taking the class. So that's why the course objectives and what we want to accomplish in this quarter is we want to accomplish these things. Externally, this might be what motivated us externally to get in here, but why do we want to get the degree in the first place? We want to get the degree in the first place because of our subsequent relationships. We want to have a good job, we want to have a meaningful career or something like that. So it's required for the degree because these are important components that we'll need in life, and the students already have identified this by using this as the basic criteria that they're planning to use in order to accomplish the goals for this class. So for the next few weeks while we're together in this class, this is what we'll be focusing on. We'll be focusing on improving our writing and our interpretation and our understanding skills. We'll try to cover content that we can use later in our life and try to identify and explore principles of writing and reading and interpretation that we can use in other classes. Sounds good, right? Thank you.